Hello, my name is Derek De La Paz, and we're here at Mill City Roasters in Northeast Minneapolis. I'm the roasting educator at Mill City Roasters, so we're in the roastery today doing some roasting on gas. And one thing that I'm going to do is basically I'm here to develop a couple coffees. We started selling some roasted coffee on our website just to kind of help people understand development, but also be able to taste a coffee in a fully developed roast profile so that it's not just like a discussion. You can actually buy the roasted product, cup it, brew it, taste it, and then order the green and kind of replicate the roast. So we've done that one coffee, and it's our Honduras, our micro lot Honduras that we developed for the USBC calibration for the judges. We're actually have that on our web for sale as a green and as a roasted product. It's the Irma Aguenta right here next to me. So we're basically gonna keep that process moving forward with other green coffees. The coffee that I'm super excited about right now that we're selling as a green is this Rwanda right here. So this Rwanda is super complex, it's very lovely. My favorite coffee is a washed Yirgacheffe or a washed Ethiopian East African. Those are my favorite coffees. So this is very much in that same context or that same style. And it's been a long time since I've developed an East African washed light roast for sale. So this is super exciting for me. It's probably been, 4 or 5 years since I've done this for this type of coffee. So I really want to put a lot of time and a lot of effort and really, I'm not saying I'm going to get this profile perfect, but I'm going to do my best to get this profile perfect. I'm going to develop this profile over the coming weeks. Today we're going to start out with 3 or 4 different roasts of this coffee. To be really honest, what I really like to do when I'm developing a new roast for a new green, I should say, I like to use a roast that I've already developed and drop that new green into that roast. And then I can kind of compare how that coffee cups or tastes in that roast compared to the other green coffee that I'm using in that roast. And that'll probably help me kind of start the process out with a little bit of a head start and maybe save 1 or 2 other roasts that I might have done that I don't need to do now because I'm gonna get that data from just using that one ideal roast from a different green. So that's what I'm gonna do to start. So the first roast today, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so now I'm gonna get ready to do this first roast of the Rwanda. I already have a roast plan, I kind of hinted towards that in the intro. I'm gonna do all these development roasts moving forward in this process on the 1 kilogram roaster right to my left. That's where I'm gonna develop all the profiles. Behind me to my left even farther is a 6 kilogram production roaster. That's the machine that I'm gonna do the final production roasting for sale on. But we're gonna develop all the roasts with the 1K right here to my left. So I'm gonna do all my profiles on the 1K right here. That was actually a similar machine that I used to develop the Irma Aguenta. So that's how we're gonna start. With the Rwanda, I'm starting at a full 1 kg charge. I'm gonna use the same parameters that I used for the ideal roast for the Honduras, Irma Aguenta. So that's my plan basically here. So for phases, I'm looking for 430 dry end or green to yellow transition, 830 first crack, and then I'm gonna go plus 2 minutes and 9 seconds past crack to a similar, I'm gonna have a sample of the Honduras that I'm gonna use for roast level verification, and I'm gonna try and marry up the color to the same development. And that's gonna be my first roast. Basically the second and third roasts, I'll do another intro or I'll explain what I'm gonna do with those roasts. But basically what I'm gonna do with those is I'm probably just gonna fiddle with final temperature. I'm just gonna do a second and third roast with the same profile parameters, but I'm just gonna change the final set temp, drop temp I wanna call it. And I'm probably gonna end up going lighter and maybe lighter on both, to be honest. I'm just gonna kind of evaluate as each roast finishes. And if I don't hit my ideal goal, which is the 430, 830 plus 209, then I'm just gonna redo that. And I'm gonna keep roasting until I hit that goal. And then my first deviation will probably be same phase events, same everything, just to a lighter roast level, final temperature. But basically that's gonna be the goal. So I already have the roaster warmed up. I've been warming up the roaster for about 25, 30 minutes. I'm ready to go. Basically for this first roast, like I said, I'm gonna use the same setup that I've already used before. So I'm gonna use a 385 Fahrenheit charge. I have my airflow set to 30 on the dial on the 1K. Fuel's gonna be off. At 1 minute, I'm gonna hit the ignition switch and I'm gonna hit it with 2 kp of gas, which roughly on this machine is about 80% fuel. And that's gonna be my first minute plan. I have an initial lowering of the fuel in my plan, right around 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm gonna wait and evaluate how the roast is progressing at that point to make that decision then. But I already have my first minute plan. I'm using the full 1K charge weight. The machine's been warmed up. I think I told you all the parameters for it, so I think it's time to roast. So eventually, I'm gonna evaluate these roasts 24 to 48 hours off rest in a standard cupping protocol. And I'll probably do that from home. So we'll wait and we'll evaluate these roasts after a day of rest or more. Okay, well, I'm gonna get to roasting right now, so I'll see you guys soon. Okay, so that first roast went really well. The goals that I gave myself for the first roast that I talked about in that earlier segment, we nailed it. So I hit all my markers that I wanted, 430 green to yellow transition, 830 first crack, and then we did plus 209 for development time. And roughly the roast level, when I compared it to the Honduras in the same time, was a little bit lighter. So this coffee, it's slightly denser. So it took on development a little slower. So I got a lighter roast level, I would say like by about 4 or 5 degrees than I would have gotten off the Honduras. And I could have went longer to get that roast level similar to the Honduras, but for this development process, I really want to stick to the same time in the phases and really just adjust the final roast level. So I hit all my phase markers, but the roast level was a little lighter than I wanted by about 4 or 5 degrees. So that's kind of great. That would have been my second or third roast, to be honest, if I would have had the roast level development out of the first one. So now with this one, we're basically gonna go for the same goals, same everything. I just want to go about 4 or 5 degrees darker. So that first one I ended at 397. So this one I'm looking at ending right around, that's BT probe. This one I'm looking at ending probably around 401 to 403, roughly. I'm just gonna kind of feel it out. And then that'll be a little bit darker than the first roast, but about similar to the ideal roast level of the Honduras. And then we'll see how this one goes. And then the third and fourth will be basically like probably another darker version of 2 would be 3, and then 4 might be something completely different. We'll just wait and see. I have the roaster warmed up. I'm ready to go on another roast. And so I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of feedback on that first roast and also give you the plan for the second roast. So same plan, 430 green to yellow, 830 first crack, 209 development time. I'm just gonna go for 4 or 5 degrees darker. So I just want to carry a little bit more momentum in. So I'm just gonna probably keep the fuel up a little higher. That's about all I'm gonna do. My last fuel adjustment, I probably won't lower as much. All right, so now we're getting ready to do roast number 3. Roast number 2 kind of went a little bit wonky. So basically roast number 2, I took 57 seconds off of roast number 1, but I also added 2 degrees. So that's kind of a little kitty wampus. It went faster by a minute, a little less than a minute, but I went a little darker. So my goal with roast number 2 was to go a little darker. That was kind of my goal, but I wanted to go a little darker, more like 5 degrees darker, but with within the same time frame as the first roast. And so that second roast kind of went off a little bit. So I'm gonna kind of call that one the flyer roast of the set and leave that where it's at. And now I'm gonna try and redo what my goals were for roast number 2. I'm gonna try to basically stick within the same phases, 430 green to yellow, 830 first crack, plus 209. But I want to go 4 or 5 degrees darker than roast 1, which roast 1 was 397 BT final temp. So I'm looking for 401, 402, somewhere in that range with the same time frame. So this third roast now, I'm going to adjust my fuel inputs quite a bit because now I'm starting to realize that the machine's gaining more momentum as now I'm roasting on it. And that's why my roast went so much faster, the second roast from the first roast. So this next roast, I'm going to try and redo the goals for roast 2 with less fuel input to try and hit those markers. So that's the goal for roast 3, redo the goal for roast 2. Roast 2 kind of created a unique cup. It was a little shorter, which was kind of what I was thinking anyways for maybe roast 4 or 5, was just to go with the shorter roast profile. So we kind of knocked that one out anyways, although it went a little darker, but only 2 degrees, so not a huge variance of roast level. But I'll be back after roast 3 to give you guys a heads up. Okay, so I feel pretty successful around roast 3. Roast 3 was plus 18 seconds, plus 3 degrees. So our goal was plus no seconds, plus 3 to 5 degrees. So pretty solid. I think we'll stick with that. If that roast number 3 ends up becoming, the winner on the cupping table, then we'll probably double down on that roast profile, and then we'll work on kind of hitting that original ideal goal for that roast. So now we're going to move on to a 4th roast. And with the 4th roast, I'm going to really probably do something, like I said, roast number 2 is kind of a flyer, but when I really looked at the data, it wasn't that huge of a flyer. It was basically just a minute less time. So I'm gonna take that and say that's okay. It was similar roast level development. So roast level's been pretty consistent across all these roasts. That one had a minute less time, so that's going to be a pretty big difference in the cupping table just on time, in thought. So we'll kind of leave that where it's at. But for roast number 4, I'm really going to kind of change the whole profile. So basically the goals for roast number 4 are going to be, basically what I'm doing is I'm going to take 30 seconds of dry phase, and I'm going to take 30 seconds of development phase and shift them into mid phase. That's the goal for this roast. Pretty simple. So 4 minutes to green to yellow or dry end, 9 minutes to first crack, and then plus 1 minute and 39 seconds after crack. So hopefully we can stick to the same time, 10:39 roughly, and I'm going for the same roast level too, 397. So we're basically trying to replicate the first roast exactly in time and temperature, but just shift 30 seconds from the first phase, 30 seconds from the third phase into the middle phase. I'm just gonna really go for a lot of sweetness in this cup and a lot of brightness. That's kind of my thought. This Rwandan's pretty spectacular, so if I can nail this roast, this might be a really special cup of Rwanda. You never know, but you gotta try. So we're gonna go for that roast. I have the roaster warmed up. I am going with a higher charge temp on this roast. That's one of the ways I'm gonna try and shave off that 30 seconds of dry phase. So that's basically my plan around this. So I have my plan ready to go. And just so you guys know, this is the last roast of the Rwanda. Next coffee we're gonna work on is the washed Sumatra Ache. We'll check back in a little bit. All right, so welcome back. So yeah, that last roast went really well. Right on the money. So we had our 4-minute dry end, which is exactly what we were going for. And then it looks like first crack came a little early, so 8:44 instead of our goal of 9. But pretty much everything else is perfect. So that was a really nice roast. I really like that. That'll be nice to compare to the other Rwandans that were kind of more in a similar roast profile. All right, well now we're gonna move on to Sumatra. So Sumatra is the second coffee that I'm working on to develop a production roast profile. So this is a washed Sumatra Che. We've sourced this coffee 2 years in a row now. It's a really lovely coffee we get from Cafe Imports. I really like it. For a Sumatra, it's very bright and clean. So it's got lots of acidity, lots of brightness. Once again, I'm gonna use that same Honduras Irma Aguenta profile that I've already developed because I really know how that Honduras is gonna taste and cup out in that profile, and I can just compare that to the Sumatran and kind of have an understanding about how the Sumatran is gonna roast. So I'm gonna stick to that same profile for my first profile, and then I'm gonna create 2 other deviations and only do 3 roasts of the Sumatran today. So that's gonna be the goal for this roast. It's the same as the Honduras roast. I'm gonna do a 1 kg charge, and basically all the parameters will be the same. I'm just gonna use this Sumatran. And then after I get done with the Sumatran roast, we'll reevaluate how that went, and we'll build a goal for a second and third roast. And I'll share that with you guys and we'll get back together. Okay, I'll check back after this roast. All right, so that went pretty well. Actually, what happened is that roast being the first of the Sumatrans, it kind of actually became what I was thinking for a third roast of the Sumatran, which is just kind of speeding it up. I just kind of wanted to use similar roast levels, but just have a little bit shorter roast. And so actually what happened was a very classic kind of light roast, I want to say. Or I shouldn't say light roast because I kept the development the same. But basically that first roast of the Sumatran was pretty perfect on the dry phase, nailed it at 4:30, but then instead of having an 8:30 first crack, we ended up having a 7:30 first crack. So that was on me. I ended up leaving the fuel up a little bit high. I was worried that it was a little moist, and then it might take a little bit more energy to get it to dry. And then I ended up keeping the fuel on a little too long during the dry phase, and then that's what shortened up my mid phase. So life goes on, but that was actually the plan that I was gonna do for the third roast. So it's kind of nice. So we nailed that third roast plan, even though we didn't plan it. And so now we're gonna try and redo the first roast plan. So basically just do everything we did with the first roast except add a minute to mid phase, because we did do 239 development too. So that first roast went 939 to 401. So pretty much right in our roast level range. We were looking for 397. It was a little bit darker, but still similarly in that range where I'm not gonna undo the apple cart for just that couple degrees of roast development. But we're gonna try and redo that original profile. So just add a minute to mid, and that'll be our goal. So with this roast, we're going for 430 dry end, 830 crack, plus 209. So that'll be the goal for the next roast, and I'll check back after this roast. All right, well, that roast went really well. So our goal for that roast was 430, 830, and then plus 209. We were trying to redo the roast 1 because roast 1 kind of went a little quick. So what we ended up with was 430, perfect, 835, 5 seconds long, and then 1044 to 397. So other than being 5 seconds long on the mid phase or the first crack, we pretty much nailed that roast. So that's super awesome. Looks nice. We'll cup it tomorrow just to know, like, you never really know what the plan, how it's going to turn out in the cup, but it's nice to achieve your plan. So now for the third roast, basically I'm going to kind of continue on the same, I don't know what you call it, direction, I guess. So the first roast was the shortest, the second roast was the longest, similar roast level. So now with the third roast, I'm just going to extend time. So the third roast goal is going to be 5:30 dry end, 9-minute first crack plus 209 to the same roast level of 397. So with the Sumatran being a lower density, larger bean, I'm going to experiment with just extending the overall time of this roast and just see what happens with that. I tend to find a lot of times with Sumatrans or lower grown, lower density beans that are kind of large, that they tend to do really well from a little bit more time in the roaster, basically just a little bit more or a little bit gentler heat application is kind of what I'm thinking. So that's basically what we're going to do with this next roast. Roast 3 will be the final roast of the day. Hey, welcome back. So we're continuing on with the Rwanda Sumatra development project, I guess we could call this. I'm developing these 2 coffees that we sell for greens as production roasts, and we're going to eventually sell them in probably, I think we sell 12-ounce bags of the roasted product. So that's kind of an exciting project. It's something exciting for me because during the stay-home order, I've been able to come into the roastery once in a while and keep working on developing these roasts. So this has been really nice. So this is my second cupping session I just finished. And so now I have the 1K warming up behind me, and so now we're ready to basically do the second round of roasting. I'm thinking that I'm going to need to probably do one more development round of roasting if I don't hit a home run today, and then I'll probably finalize the profile and then get ready to production roast it. So finished my second round of cupping, and now I've made some decisions. So I'm just going to share with you my decisions. So I've cupped the Sumatran twice, I have 3 Sumatran roasts, and I cupped the Rwandans twice. So I had some differing, results. You know, the first round of cuppings I cupped at home, and I don't know about you all, if you guys have done a lot of traveling cupping, but water is very different in different locations, and we do the high-level filtered SCA spec water here at the roastery, but at home I just use Minneapolis chlorinated regular city water. And so I'm thinking that my crazy different results, I mean, they're not crazy different, but they're pretty different. It was caused by that. I mean, also sensory evaluation is best done in a situation with minimal sensory input. And obviously my home kitchen is kind of lacking that. So maybe it was a better analysis today. So I'm gonna side with more of the data that I acquired today here at the roastery. All right, so basically what I decided is for the Sumatra, I'm gonna stick with roast number 2. So roast number 2 is over there, but that's the roast I'm gonna go with and I'm gonna double down on. The reason why is it was basically more sweet. It had a lot of sweetness and it was very approachable. It was soft. I'm kind of thinking on the medium side of light with the Sumatra. So it was soft, approachable, and sweet, and I really like that. My second favorite was number 3. So what I wanna do is I wanna add in a little bit of what number 3 has. Number 3 seemed to have a little bit more brightness, a little more citrus. So I want to add in some of that citrus from number 3 into number 2. But number 2 is going to be the roast that I'm going to work on, and I'm going to kind of now draw that in as my new ideal roast for Sumatra, and I'll just keep working on that roast. With looking at roast number 3 and trying to maybe integrate some of those qualities into roast 2 if it's possible. So that's the Sumatra. So I'm going to keep working on roast number 2. So for Rwanda, I'm going to go with roast number 3. And this was a little bit hard because I had some kind of differing information from the 2 different cupping sessions. I like Rwanda 3 because it was very juicy, you know, and sweet of the set, but it lacked acidity. Number 1 had a little bit more acidity, and it also had a red fruit note that I didn't really get in any of the others. So I'm really going to try and grab that red fruit note, look at that profile of number 1, and hopefully I can get that to show up in number 3. But Rwanda number 3 is going to be the profile that I'm going with, and that was because it had a lot of balance and juicy. And for the Rwanda, I'm going more on the light side of light. So it's going to be kind of a classic East African light cup. A lot of complexity, a lot of acidity in that cup. All right, well, those are the results from the cupping. So now I'm just going to get back on the roaster. I'm going to roast 3 more roasts of each coffee in that ideal profile with the deviations. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Sumatra, same charge weight, and I'm going to re-roast roast number 2 and try and nail it. And then if I nail it, then I'm going to do deviations of roast number 2, looking at roast number 3 as those deviations. And I'm going to do the same thing with Rwanda. I'm going to re-roast Rwanda number 3, and then I'm going to look at Rwanda number 1 for some deviations if I nail it. Then when I recup, I'm actually going to keep these ideals off this table and bring them onto the next table. I know that's a little weird with rest, but I'm just going to let that slide, and I'm still going to keep these ideals and cup the new ideals off against these ideals. All right, well, I'm going to get to the roaster and do some roasting. We're back at the roastery in Northeast Minneapolis, and I think I'm finally ready to do the first production roast or official production roast of the Rwanda. So we've been working on this, done a couple of cupping sessions, maybe 3 or 4, done a couple of roasting sessions, probably 3 or 4 too, and now I've gotten to the final production roast that we're gonna actually now roast on the 6K. So you can see the 6K to my left. I'm gonna roast it on the 6K. I'm actually gonna roast it at a 4 kg charge weight of green for this roast, just because I want to do a little less, I want to produce a little less coffee so that I can maybe have a few more bites of the apple when it comes to roasting this coffee weekly, daily, however often I roast it. But I'm going to build the profile for 4 kg charge on the 6 kg as a production roast. I've taken it from the 1K and the 1.5K that I've been developing it on. So firstly, I'm just going to talk through the cup description, the basic cup description of the final roast of the Rwanda, which I'm going to describe the nose, I'm going to describe the taste, I'm going to describe the body and the acidity. That's basically it. So in the nose, there's a lot of, this is a very bright, light, complex East African coffee. I really like it. I'm probably going to bring some of this home and drink it this weekend. So the nose, I'm going to go with orange zest, hibiscus, floral, malt, mandarin, summer melon, and roasted almond. It's very fruit forward, but I'd say more in a yellow kind of fruit, citrus fruit kind of way. For taste, I'm going with Meyer lemon, orange marmalade, pomegranate, hibiscus tea, lemon curd, green tea, and almond butter. It's a very complex coffee, very citrusy, but then there's also a lot of red and even a little bit of like kind of purple blue fruit in my opinion. So it's kind of a neat coffee in the color world of my brain. The body I'm going to describe as round and smooth. The acidity I'm going to describe as juicy, tart, and bright. The overall balance is more acid, nuance forward. So I'm definitely siding on the lighter side of balance. I want more acid and I want more nuance. Just to give you guys some of the roast color analysis information, the SCA Gourmet Scale, outside it was a 76, inside it was a 92. Okay, now for the roast. So we're gonna roast that on this machine right here. So I'm gonna charge off the PID, which is what we do on all the Mill City machines. I'm gonna do a 350 Fahrenheit charge temp with a 4 kg charge weight. I'm gonna have my air set to 13 on the 6K. I'm gonna have the fuel off. At 1 minute, I'm gonna hit it with 175 kPa. Now this is my first plan for the first production roast. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna adjust it. But I'm just giving you guys my base plan. At 1 minute, I'm gonna hit it with gas and I'm gonna do 175 kPa on the 6K. Roughly my goals for this roast are green to yellow transition at 545, which I increase my airflow to 15 at that point and lower my fuel to 115 kPa. Then I'm looking for around 740. I'll increase the airflow again to 16, 17, and I'll probably lower the fuel again to like 0.8 kPa based on the rate of rise that I'm achieving at that point. First crack, I'm looking for at 846. The development of this coffee is plus 144. So plus 1 minute and 44 seconds of development. And roughly, I'm gonna use a sample match. Basically, it's a small amount of roasted coffee from my ideal profile, which would be number 7 right here. So I'm gonna use this, not the temperature, for the final drop as far as roast color goes. But I'm roughly looking on my ideal on the other machines, it was roughly 1030 to 388 BT. But all probes are gonna be a little different. You know, all machines run a little different, so I'm not gonna use 388 as my end all be all drop temp. I'm gonna use my roast color for that. But I'm looking for plus 144 time past crack. So those are all my, that's my plan. I think everything sounds really solid. I'm feeling strong about this. I feel like I've done my due diligence. So now I'm just gonna warm up the 6K and get roasting. Good afternoon, everybody. I just finished my final quality control cupping of the new Rwanda production roast. So the Honduras Irma Agüeta was the first production roast we've ever done, and now we're into our second. So it's super exciting. The design team has done some excellent work on the labels. Beautiful label to my right. We've bagged the coffee and sealed it, and it's ready to be sold. I really like this Rwanda, partially because it's very complex. That was one of the things I liked about it. But also, sometimes I've thought of Rwandans as being kind of a mix between an East African and an Indonesian. Like a little bit of that kind of Indo-funk mixed with the really kind of bright, floral, citrusy notes of an East African. This to me is more just like a classic East African. There's really not much kind of Indo-funk on it at all. It's very clean, it's very bright. There's a little bit of vegetal quality to it, but it's really nice, kind of foundational vegetal quality flavors that add a lot of foundation to the flavor of the final cup. So I just finished my QC cupping. One of the things I thought of right at the very end on the final profile that I basically decided on for the ideal was my last note on it was could use more sweetness. The next roast, if I kept developing this coffee, that would be the next step, a little bit more sweetness. But then I thought to myself, okay, all things like coffee is a little bit like a balloon. You squeeze it and you can't really, things just move around. So if I was to add more sweetness, it would be at the detriment of other things, potentially acidity and nuance. This Rwanda has a lot of beautiful East African nuance. So after I wrote that down, I thought about it and I decided it was a bad idea. We're not gonna add in more sweetness. We're gonna go with this roast, we're gonna leave it as is with a very bright, acidic, citrus-forward cup. And I think that's really nice. I tend to always side in sweetness when it comes to my development. So this is a little bit of a development cup, a little outside of my realm, because I'm purposely siding with more acidity and nuance and less sweetness. Even though the next step in my brain would be to add sweetness, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna leave it as is. And I think you all are gonna really like it because it's got a lot of natural sweetness, but the way it's roasted is it really showcases the Rwanda nuance and origin flavor. So if you're ready to try some kind of bright, exciting East African, try the Rwanda. We have it bagged for sale on the website. I have also been working on the Wash Sumatra. So as we end this project, we're just gonna fold it right into the Wash Sumatra. So the Wash Sumatra, and I'm gonna do the Wash Sumatra more like medium. We're definitely gonna side on sweetness side with that one. That will be the next step. We'll continue the process with the Wash Sumatra ongoing over the next few days. All right, well thanks for sticking in. Thanks for hanging out and listening, and we'll see you guys all next time.